to use me, God, for your glory. And I pray that in all things, Lord, that you would be seen. Lord, we love you, and we honor you, and we invite you into this place, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so I'm really excited to talk to y'all this evening about the soul. So actually, I have the privilege of being here tonight and then the next 2 Wednesdays as well, and so I'm really excited to kind of pull this apart. So we're going to look at the soul as a whole and then also as the separate parts of the soul. So before we get too wild, I think in pictures, so I'm going to use this a lot. It might not always make a lot of sense, but it helps me kind of stay grounded. So sometimes it's like, oh gosh, that's excessive. Here we go. Okay, so we have 3 parts to the soul. We have the heart, the mind, and the will. Okay, so tonight we are going to talk mostly about the heart. So, are there any idioms of the world that you guys can think of that talks about the heart? Like, follow your heart, or, oh my gosh, you gave me a heart attack. What were you going to say? Pull at your heartstrings. Don't break my heart. Heart made of gold. Yes. Or, that person wears their heart on their sleeve, right? So what are we talking about, though, right? So to say someone wears their heart on their sleeve is like their emotions are really out there. So the heart is the seat of the emotions. So what kind of emotions do we experience? Just give me a list. What's that? All of them, right?
Sadness.
Yeah, sadness, fear, anger. Yeah. What was that? Joy, yes. Happiness. Yeah, contentedness. Anxiety, yeah.
Peacefulness.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah, okay. Good. Depression, yeah.
Ecstatic.
Yeah.
We're playing ping pong here.
You do it good, I'll do it back.
Ecstatic. These are all different types of emotions, right? Up and down. Maybe we should have made 2 columns, like positive and negative, right? But even I guess it's hard to say one is positive and one is negative, because even in the suffering or the deep darkness of the soul, there can be a lot of growth. So a little bit about where I've come from. God is so good. He's been so good to me. So I have 3 older brothers and was raised by a couple of hippies. And they were good to me. For the most part, everything was pretty good. There's a lot of, bad things that happen too, just like everybody's life, right? So sexual abuse was happening in my home. Mental illness was happening in my home. Witchcraft was practiced in my home. So a lot of things that if I would have had to say so, I would have been like, yeah, let's not do that, right? So with that, there was damage to my heart, right? So a lot of times trauma marks the heart in a negative fashion, right? So it kind of scars the heart. So if we were to have, can you take me down just a little bit please, thank you. So we'll have like a scar on the heart, right? From like traumas or negative experiences, or even things like, playing on the playground and someone doesn't want to play with you. You might feel rejected, or less than, right? All of these things, and they kind of mark our hearts. And then as we grow and we go on with life, and we've collected these scars, like we're living out of a lot of these hurts and these traumas. And so the heart being the seat of the emotions, but it's also the seat of our character, and it's a huge aspect of our personalities. So welcome, come on in. So looking at the heart, so like I said, I experienced some traumas, and my heart became very bitter, angry towards my family, especially my mom, my dad, hurts that I gathered that I didn't even know how to identify when I was a small child, but as I grew up and started to really do heart work, I started to identify what is this, You can only have something in your life so long before you start to see it and ask questions about it. Does that make sense? So, for instance, I went through trauma and got myself into addiction, became homeless, doing everything that I could to get high, and that was my life. And so I lived that way for quite some time, and there came a point in time where I was like, why am I doing this? And my time was running out there. And so I started asking questions like, why am I doing this? And I started to see how hard my heart was, how broken my heart was, how angry my heart was, how bitter my heart was. And it was a lot. It was a lot to try to handle. It was a lot to try to walk through, to work out. And I didn't have any tools. I didn't have any know-how of what am I supposed to do with this? And that's a lot of the reason why I got into addiction in the first place. I was running from all those hurts. I was self-medicating, and it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse. And so when I came to that place of asking myself, why am I even doing this? And looking at those things, I was really overwhelmed with the idea of even trying to address some of the hurts, some of the traumas. Does that make sense? Anybody else ever feel that way? You've been running so long, and you turn around and you look, and you're like, yeah, it's still a lot going on there. I don't really want to deal with that. And so it's a lot easier to keep running, but at some point, it becomes more difficult to keep running than it does to turn and face whatever it is, right? Maybe you caught a case, maybe you lost your kids, maybe you crashed your car, you're in the hospital. Something has happened now that's hold on, I got to deal with this before I keep going, because it's only going to get worse, right? And so we look at the heart, and it's really important to recognize that we can be deceived so easily about what we feel. And one thing I like to tell, I have a small boy, and I tell him this, and it's really for me too, your feelings are real, but they're not always true. So I can feel some type of way about whatever. And, that's valid, but I could be acting a fool and making a big scene about whatever it is and causing more people or the people around me, frustration or trauma because I'm feeling some type of way about something, when the truth of the matter is it's actually not the way that it is. Y'all following me? So say I'm talking to someone and they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. I could feel, I'm like, what do you mean, whatever? I could feel all sorts of different ways. She just whatevered me. Who does she think she is, And I could get attitude and go down that rabbit hole of well, I think this way, and it would be better if she did this or whatever, right? And when in reality, she means yeah, whichever one. You choose. So it can be easily misunderstood, communication. Communication is a whole nother topic. But a lot of a lot of what we're feeling in our heart, dictates our communication. I don't know about y'all, but I be getting attitudes sometimes. Like, so today even I was like cranky, and I'm like walking around, and I'm trying to like address my heart. What is going on inside of me that I'm feeling, cranky? Like, there's really no reason. I'm like, the sun is shining, like it's all good. I have the day off work, like we're good. And if you don't take time to address what's happening in your heart, it festers. Am I right? Anybody experience that? Yeah. Yeah, and it can explode, right? Yes, it's kind of like when I was really little, I remember getting in trouble at school one time, and I was in the principal's office, and the principal's like, what's going on? And I expressed to him, I remember so vividly, I was like, I'm like a temperature gauge. It goes up, and it goes up, and it goes up, and then all of a sudden it just explodes. And he was like, it's very insightful. I was like, well, that's how I felt, I didn't learn how to deal with my emotions or to address them, and so I did a lot of stuffing, and then they would just come out in this big explosion, right? Am I the only one? I'm the only one? No? Okay. So what's interesting is I don't think a lot of us learned how to deal with our emotions, truly. And I think it's because the people that came before us, they probably didn't learn how to deal with them either. There's not like an aspect of our formative education that's like, now this is how you deal with emotions, right? Like, you're in kindergarten and it's like, no, don't hit. Well, what's the truth? I feel angry, he took my toy, right? So now I'm gonna hit him. Well, so instead of addressing like the byproduct of the emotion, we actually have to address the emotion, right? Like, okay, you're feeling upset. What happened, right? And so just as like we would talk to, a kindergartner in that time, like we kind of got to talk to our own hearts about in the same way. Like, okay, you yelled at that person or you got really sassy. Why? What are you feeling that made you think that that was, a good choice? Okay, well, I'm actually feeling, so I've noticed for myself, because I think it's really important that we we learn about who we are too and how we respond in different situations. So I've been noticing lately that I get really sad when I'm tired. And lately I've been like, I'll be like, oh, and then I'll stop and kind of like, oh, I'm actually feeling tired right now as I'm like weeping, And I'm like, okay, I'm learning this about Kira. Okay, she gets really sad feeling when she's tired. And it's literally just like, I want to go to bed now. But bedtime for me on a perfect night is like 8 o'clock. So I don't know about y'all, just me. So, it's important to know ourselves, like why we're doing certain things or acting certain ways when we're feeling some type of way, right? So some of these other emotions, right? Sadness, grief, depression, fear, anger, joy, happiness. Some of these things are kind of like, as I've been looking at them in my own heart, are kind of like branches to the same root. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So for instance, like I was telling you about the woundedness of my heart, going through, childhood trauma and things like that. And I had started to see, there was this root of bitterness in my heart. And so, this is the root. And it's deep. It goes pretty deep here, And what does it produce in my life but, anger and frustrations and fears, all sorts of things. And so we can like pluck the leaves, like, oh, I'm feeling this way, or oh, I'm feeling that way. But what actually caused us to feel that way and to go back to it? So for me personally, I didn't feel understood as a child. Like, I didn't feel heard. So in my household, like, I was the youngest of 4, and my brothers were... Well, my oldest brother was 11 years older than me, and so he was, like, in high school when I was little and stuff, And so there's a lot going on there, and he experienced some traumas and things like that, and then there was this, mental breakdown that caused this traumatic experience than for me. He actually had shot me and tried to kill me when I was 7. And so it was like, that's kind of a lot to deal with as a child, right? And so when this happened in my life, there was some sexual abuse surrounding that and different things, and it wasn't like, so I was 7, right? And I remember calling my friend and being like, yeah, I can't come to school right now because my brother shot me, and I'm on the phone, like a quarter phone. My mom like rushes across the kitchen and like grabs the phone, like, you can't be telling people stuff like that. And I was like, well, it's the truth. Like, I don't understand. And so it was like, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to tell anyone. Like, this is, this isn't, we're going to pretend like this didn't happen, and it was like, okay, so it's like not a big deal, or how do I process that, right? And so I just was like, oh, okay, and like kept going with my life. But with that, that was a really traumatic thing. Like, it was a very traumatic thing for me to try to process, and there wasn't any conversation surrounding that. Now, bless my mom, like she didn't know what to do in that situation. But there was, I had another brother practicing witchcraft, and then another brother who has some, mental, emotional issues so there's just a lot going on. And it was kind of like, don't rock the boat. Don't rock the boat. And so, like, I take my wounds, and I'm like, okay, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. Don't tell anybody. And I need to get out of here as soon as I can. So I did. But when you receive a wound like that, and it's not taken out, it's not addressed, it's not talked about, you learn that's like okay that people treat you that way. You know what I'm saying? And the truth is it's not okay. But something about the soul. So I'm gonna go back a minute, because I wanna set something up for you. So in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were created in perfect union with God. And they were, let me draw you a picture of how it's supposed to look. So they're in the garden, and they're walking, with God. And the spirit is prominent. It's first. The soul is subject to the spirit, and then the flesh is subject to the soul. So that's the design. That's God's design, okay? So sin comes in, and when sin entered, the spirit man died, and the flesh became prominent over the soul. Okay, so what is the flesh, right? The flesh is the body, okay? So how many of you are like, oh, my body needs this? Like, for me, it used to be like my body literally couldn't go without dope. So it was like, I have to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have to. Like, my body will freak out. I'm sick. Like, I've got the sweats. I've got the shakes. Like, all of it. So I was allowing my body to lead. I would give my body whatever it wanted. If my body wanted to go be with whoever down the road, my body went and did whatever. You know what I'm saying? So this is out of God's design. When we're born again in Christ, we receive the Spirit of God, which causes us to be alive in Him. So we have the Spirit come back into the picture. Now, it's our job then, alongside of the Spirit, to subject our soul to the Spirit and bring our flesh into subjection to that. So we have to allow the Spirit of God to bring our flesh and our soul under His dominion, under His leadership. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. So when we're out of balance, when we don't have the Spirit of God in our lives, and we're letting our flesh lead, and our soul is, really participating with the flesh, sin is ruling in our lives. Now, sin is expressed in our lives through our heart, our mind, and our will. So any sin that has been committed against you or any sin that you've committed has originated out of our heart, our mind, and our will. So the seat of our emotions, in conjunction, complementary to our mind, and the expression of our choices. Are y'all following me? Okay. So when I feel some type of way, and my mind is in agreement, I'm going to go do the thing, right? Okay. So let's talk about how ugly my heart's been for a minute, because I'm just going to keep it real with you guys. So there was a time in my life when, I'm getting high, I'm homeless, I was working as a prostitute to get high, and I'm with this guy, and I'm on my way back from the Dakotas. I couldn't even tell you where I was. I was so strung out. I couldn't tell you where I was. But I'm somewhere on the road between here and there. And I'm sitting in the back seat, and I'm thinking, man, how do I get away from this guy? Oh, man. So, mind you, I was, okay. All right. So, this is how I got into that situation. So, I was at a gas station with my boyfriend a couple months before that, and a guy shows up and was like, hey, if you want to, make some money, let me know. And I was just trying to get high, right? And so I'm like, yeah, I'll let you know. So some time goes by, and I'm dope sick, and I can't find anything, can't get anywhere, I don't know what to do, So I call the guy, I walk 3 miles to meet him, and then go to the cities, and I start working. And then I couldn't even tell you how long after that. I'm on the street, and it's I literally have nothing but the clothes on my back. And so I'm just walking around trying to figure out where am I going to sleep tonight? I don't know where to go from here. I'm in North Minneapolis on Lake Street, and I just got dropped off by someone who was taking care of me. And I'm 19 probably at the time. I'm not really thinking anything of it. I just look back and I think man, you were so stupid. There were so many situations that I should not have walked out of. You know what I'm talking about? So many situations that by the grace of God, I walked out of. But anyways, so I'm walking down Lake Street, and this guy stops and he picks me up. And next thing I know, I'm in the Dakotas, I'm working, and I'm thinking how do I get away from this guy? I can't even describe to you the type of person this is, but, so we're driving back, and I'm sitting in the back seat, and I had a knife that I would, peel my mangoes with, because I really liked mangoes. I still really like mangoes. So I had a knife back there, and I noticed that he moved it, and so I was sitting there, and I'm, contemplating murdering this man. I'm sitting there man, if I just, do this, then, the car will probably crash, but I might make it out, and even if I don't, I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm, this is where I'm at. This is how ugly my heart was. And I'm sitting back there, and I am brooding. And I said to him, where's my knife? And he just, looked at me in the rearview mirror and was like, you can't have the knife, which, by the grace of God, that wasn't something that I participated in physically. But how many of you know what happens in the heart? I've already committed. You know what I'm saying? So in my heart, I murdered this man. And so in the sight of God, that's exactly what I did. I didn't physically do that, but that's sin. It starts in the heart. So maybe y'all haven't been there. That's where I was. But even when someone cuts us off in traffic and we're oh, I oughta, bro, you're looking for the knife. Same boat. You hear what I'm saying? because in your heart, you've already harbored hatred towards that person. And so in the heart, you've committed murder, to hate someone, to tear them down, to obliterate them, right? So there's things that happen in the heart that are deep, heavy, right? Out of the heart is where we experience the most catastrophic emotions, the heaviest, the darkest, the deepest, and the most joyous, right? I remember when I had my son, I wish I could, how many of you are mothers or have a child or was there when your child was born, right? Yeah, and the moment that you see them, or it's like, whoa, right? You feel like you got struck by a bus or something. But for me, 3 years prior to having my son, God had promised me a baby. And so when I had him, it was like the dam broke open, and my heart was so full of joy, so full of joy. So I say that to say, you and I, we're not too far apart. Like, I have harbored hatred against others. I have committed sins in my heart that I'd rather not tell you, right? But I tell you because I want you to understand that sin is sin, and there's nothing that you have done that God can't forgive. And if God can forgive the ugliness of my heart, then I know that he can forgive the ugliness of your heart. And so that's really why I want to share, some of those things with y'all. So anyways, it's been 11 years since I've done dope, so praise the Lord. Yeah, it's been a long time now that I've been following him and allowing him to just work in my life. And so there's hope. There's always hope of transformation, and I just love that about, submitting and surrendering our souls, our hearts, and our minds, and our wills unto the Lord, because he can do so much with that. A surrendered heart is the very thing that he's like, oh, yes, a willing vessel. So, yeah. Some of these emotions up here are things that we can only experience in conjunction with the Spirit of God. Happiness is, the appreciation and the expression of glee in the things and the people around us. But joy is unchanging. Joy is a byproduct of a relationship with the Lord. And that is something that actually can sustain you. So we're not supposed to live by our emotions, but in the world we oftentimes do, right? So we don't want to be led by our emotions, and we want to subject our emotions to the Spirit of God. But when we're not, we're out of alignment, right? So what does that look like if we're being led by our emotions? Anybody have any comments about what you think that looks like when you're led by your emotions? Chaos. Out of control. Yeah. Constantly changing, right? Compulsiveness. Impulsiveness, yeah. What was that? Irritability, yeah. To be led by our emotions, it is like chaos. It's kind of like riding a roller coaster. You don't know if you're going up or you're going down. You're going to take a really sharp turn. Like, it's kind of all over the place, right? Because our emotions can be influenced mostly by external stimulus, right? Someone pinches you, ow! And all of a sudden you're angry. This is the one that gets me. Something that makes me really angry so fast. So I have a 9-year-old boy and my husband. They like to sneak on me. Y'all know what I'm saying? They like to sneak on me. So they'll hide behind doors and roar. And my response is I will fight you. So I have to keep myself because I'll be like, oh. But it's an emotional response, right? And it was funny because the other day, actually, I got my son really good. He went out to take the trash and came back in. and I was behind the door, and so I pounced on him, and he was like, whoa, right? And he's like, I was about to smash you with the garbage can. I was like, but he didn't. And I was laughing so hard. I was like, I got you, finally, I got you. Like, and my husband comes and he's like, look at you, you're ridiculous right now. You got him, you scared him. And they're, because they always give me a hard time. Like, when you get scared, you get angry. Like, you can't be on both sides. And I was like, well, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But so my son was like, I'm going to get you back, And he does all the time. I try not to, get too feisty with him. It's easier for me to pretend like he didn't get me than anything else. But how many of you know fight or flight response is a real thing, right? Yeah, so I tried to explain to them. I'm like, my response is fight. Like, my fists come up, and I'm like, I will go ham on whoever is, So I try to, like, if you're going to scare me, make sure you're at least a couple feet back, because if I come out swinging, it's not my fault. So thankfully, my son doesn't understand, trauma response either. So how many of you understand trauma response? Yeah. So something I've dealt with in the past, speaking of trauma response, is how many of you are familiar with your vagus nerve? Yep. And you'll just go out? Anybody? Me too. Yeah. So sometimes, this one time actually, not too long ago, I was cutting up venison. I think we were slicing venison to make beef jerky. And I'm like slicing, cut my finger. And I was like, ow. And then all of a sudden, my vagus nerve trips, and I'm like, gosh darn it, here we go. I know I'm going down. So I get all the way down, and my son's like, are you okay? I was like, I need water. And so he's so sweet. He gets me water and a banana. He's like, here, Mom, you need potassium. I was like, thanks, Bob. Trying to eat my banana as I'm, on the ground, like, yeah, that's what I need, potassium, you're right. I'm like, come on, you trauma response, like, you're fine. I can totally do other people's blood, my own blood. It's like right back to, trauma response. We have to sometimes, because this is the body, right? The body is responding to the wound of the heart, and now it's like, I'm in control. So sometimes you can go through a situation, like for instance, a friend of mine was talking to me about a court situation where she had gone through like court situation, and then like made space and time from that, did a lot of healing, and then was like, had a court situation come up she had to go back into. And she was telling me about, talking to her body, like, hey, you're okay. Like, it's okay. Like, I know you feel some type of way. You're not in trouble. You're actually, not going to be hurt. Like, it's okay, and just like talking to her body through that, because her trauma response was freaking out. It was flaring up, right? So it's important that, when we learn about who we are and we start to pay attention about our responses, our emotions, like how we think through problems, that we start to address some of those things and like really speak truth to them. So speaking truth to our emotions, right? Because remember how I said that our emotions are real, but they're not always true, right? So, for instance, today I was telling you, like, I had an attitude problem, and I'll go on prayer walks, I'll walk around my property, and that's really when I talk to the Lord the best. It's easiest for me to, like, process things, probably because I'm moving my body, and I'm, like, focused, and I'm just, so I'm going on this prayer walk, and I'm like, gosh, I just feel this way, and I feel that way, and I feel this way, and this thing that I've been doing recently is I've been telling myself, like, hold on a second, you don't live by your emotions, you actually walk by faith. And so what's interesting about that is my emotions will still try to speak. And it's okay, that I feel something. Like, I've given myself permission to feel something, because There was a time where I wasn't allowed to feel anything, and I numbed all the feelings because the feelings were too big, right? So I had to move through that, like, no, I can feel some things, and it's okay that they're big emotions, and have walked through that to the point where now I'm like, but you're not led by your feelings, so even though you feel that way, it doesn't mean you need to, treat people with disrespect or get angry or yell or, right? Like, I'm not saying that I don't still do that because I'm human, right? Just like the rest of us, but onward growth, right? And to continue to strive for greater self-control. And self-control is actually a byproduct of the Spirit working in our lives. It's a fruit of the Spirit. And so today I was saying, to the Lord on my prayer walk, I'm like, I feel this way and I feel that way. And really it was out of a situation where I was talking to someone and I felt like I had shared too much or, and the truth of the matter was I didn't. I answered the questions appropriately. I had boundaries still, like I didn't overshare, but I felt like I did. And I had to tell myself, like, I know that you feel that way, but you're not in trouble. Like, you answered the questions, like, what you said, like, can be interpreted, however they see fit. Like, it's actually not my responsibility how they interpret me, but I'm accountable for me. And so I just, did a little self-talk and brought myself back down. So what are some emotions, what are some of the hardest emotions that y'all have experienced to deal with? Anger. Rejection. Yeah. Loss. Yeah. Oh, that's a hard one, isn't it? Feeling like you're not a good enough parent. What was the other? Loneliness. Yeah. Yeah. So, let's see. Wow. Okay, so a couple weeks ago, I'm going to touch about all of those. A couple weeks ago, I was going through this situation in my life where so my mom passed away about 6 years ago, and being a mom and not having my mom, and especially I'm walking through my son is 9 now, and for those of you who have raised boys, this is like a hard age. Like, their hormones are starting to ramp up and things are, happening and, whatever. And I was really struggling a couple weeks ago, and I was just in this place where I'm like, man, this is so hard. This is so hard. And my son and I were fighting a lot, and I'm just like, I was really bogged down, and I was feeling overwhelmed. I was feeling like a failure. I was feeling like a terrible mom. I was feeling like I was alone, like I didn't have anybody that understood me, and the only person I really wanted to talk to was my mom, because I was like, at least I could tell her, like, I get it now. Like, this was really hard. I'm so sorry. I was really, really feisty as a young lady. My mom and I fought and argued a lot. And so, arguing with my son made me feel like, oh gosh, I was trying to explain to him, I'm like, honey, you only get so much time, and you never know how much time that is. And I'm like sitting on my front step, and I'm crying, and I'm telling him, I'm like, I really miss my mom, and she's gone, and I can't tell her, like I love her, or I miss her, or I'm sorry I was so feisty with you, or, So I was trying to help him understand, like, it's important that we treat people with kindness and love always, because you never know how much time you have, right? And so later on, I'm married. I talked to my husband, and he was so sweet. He was like, Kira, just because you had a hard time with your mom doesn't mean that you have to have a hard time with our son. And it was exactly what I needed to hear. And it's like, I knew this, but my emotions were really big. My emotions were really big because I was feeling so much grief. Like, I just miss her so much. This is really hard. I feel like a terrible mom, and I feel alone. And so he just encouraged me, and he's like, it's going to be okay. Just because you had a hard time with your mom doesn't mean that's the way it has to be here, And sometimes we need, someone to just speak truth to us. Like, I know you feel this way, but the truth is that this was just a really hard day, or it's been a couple hard weeks, right? And so I get that. I get that. I really do. One thing about loneliness, too, is, so I want to, I want to say that although I'm married, and I love my husband very much, he is a good man, I have felt alone a lot of time in my relationship. And I say that to say I understand how hard the feeling of loneliness can feel, especially when you're surrounded by people that love you, because maybe you're lacking certain connection, or that person doesn't understand how to connect with you, or how to hear you, or how to understand you, or, so my husband came out of addiction as well. And like I was saying, when we don't learn how to process our emotions, especially, like if we don't know how to process our emotions and we come up to someone who's really emotional or going through something or needing some understanding, it's really hard to hear that person and try to give them something that we don't have. Does that make sense? And so as I sought the Lord, because there was a season of loneliness. Like, I mean, I would cry daily in my yellow room, which maybe I forget y'all don't know about my yellow room. I have a yellow room in which I go and I just talk to the Lord in. So that's where I meet with him. But I would go and just cry out to him, tell him how lonely I was feeling, tell him how much I wanted to go home. Like I was like, I just want to be done here. Like I just want to be done. I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm just ready, Lord. Just take me home, But I came to a place, intimacy with him grew in that season because I shared the depths of my heart so completely with him. And some of the most tangible outpourings of the presence of God that I've experienced in my yellow room was in my season of loneliness. The Lord draws close to the brokenhearted. So when you feel lonely and you go to him and you're in that quiet place and you pour out the hurts and the heartbreaks and the feelings of your heart, he loves that more than anything. He's like, oh, they're being real with me. And that's his desire, right? That we would allow him to know us. Not just like, God, I need this, and God, it would be great if I could have that, but to know us, to know our thoughts and our feelings, the depths of who we are. So I would just encourage you to be open and honest in a quiet space with God and allow him to fill that. One great revelation that came out of that season in my life was that God, Jesus, is the Prince of Peace. And so I started to confess that the Prince of Peace was in me and that his peace keeps me. And so even because our emotions aren't always true, we need to address them with truth to bring them into alignment. Does that make sense? And so when they're wanting to while out and, go off course and try to steer the way, we've got to address them with truth. Like, I know you feel angry. I know you feel lonely. I know you feel this way, but the truth is God hears me. God sees me. He's intimately involved with my life. He cares about the concerns of my heart. He wants what's best for me. He knows me so deeply. His plans for me are for goodness, for prosperity. There are good things that he wants to do in my life. And start to address those things with truth and allow them to take up space. So the Word of God says that the heart is deceitful above all else. So our emotions oftentimes will try to deceive us, right? And so that's why we need to address them with truth. The other thing that the Word says is to keep our hearts with all diligence, because out of it flows the wellspring of life. And so, again, addressing the heart with truth to keep it in alignment with what's true. Otherwise, it's going to take us off course, right? Another thing that the Word says about our hearts, David actually expresses to God, search me and know my heart. Pull out any wicked way in me. And so David is actually called a man after God's own heart. And if you go and you look, why is he called that? Because David wilded out. Like he did some things that were definitely not in alignment with God's will for his life. Like, y'all remember Bathsheba? You know what I'm talking about? Like, that wasn't God's perfect will for his life. But David is still expressed as a man after God's own heart. And if you go back and look, it's because he's willing to share the intimacies of his heart with God, that he's willing to express all of the ups and downs, the ins and the outs. That's why. And so I want to be a woman after God's own heart. I want to be transparent with him. I want to express how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and I want to give him a say-so on what it is to bring me back into alignment. Because I know that in my own strength, I'm going to wild out. If I followed every whim, every emotion that I had, I could tell you I would not be standing here. That's for sure. Right? So I want us to understand that the heart and the mind are separate but complementary. So when we look at certain emotions like anxiety or contentedness, a lot of the times we have to look at what we're thinking on. Does that make sense? So when so I recently had a situation happen in my life that was like, shoot, that was not supposed to happen. Man, and it really, really bummed me out. I was mad. I was feeling so angry at all parts of this situation. And I don't know about y'all, but when I feel angry or I feel like I've been wronged, I will look for someone to blame instead of taking whatever responsibility I have in the matter. Just me. I was like looking at this situation and I'm like, well, if they would have done this or if she would have done that, and my heart's doing this, backflips. And I'm like, and every time, because I would be in prayer and I'd be talking to the Lord about it, and I'd be like, well, Lord, if they would have just, and I'm like, but that's not the truth. And then if they could have just, well, that's not true either. And what if I did that and they, no, that's actually not truth either. And I had to come to the end of myself, and I was like, well, the truth is I am responsible for this, and that's what happened, whether I like it or not. That's hard to do. It's hard to do, isn't it? Especially when we feel wronged by, the other person or the situation. But an aspect of maturity is taking responsibility, right? So when we're in addiction and we stole something or we hurt someone or we, whatever, we're acting all sorts of different ways because our body is running the show and our emotions are all wound up. and we're hurting people left and right. We're not really concerned with what our actions are doing to other people, right? Like that's not a part of our thinking at the time, a lot of the times, right? We don't think like, oh, if I steal $500 from my mom, like, how is she going to pay her mortgage? Like, we're not thinking about stuff like that, right? We're just like, oh, got to get high, do that thing. And so that's kind of how addiction works. It's like it's very self-centered, very, self-focused. And when we mature, we grow, and we're moving out of that. One of the biggest things that we need to do is start to take responsibility for our own thoughts and our own feelings and our own actions and how they affect other people, right? So we're not going to do some of the same things that we used to do because we're responding differently. So maturity is grown through responsibility and accountability. And so when we're coming out of addiction, or we're coming out of a bad relationship or a bad situation or whatever that looks like, or we're just trying to grow in life, it's important that we have accountability and we're responding with our abilities. And when we fall short, because we will, we say, oh, this is why, or this is how, and we ask for help. And, if our emotions are acting up, we need to address those and bring them in alignment with truth. So I want to address anger. We talked about anger, right? So anger is a secondary emotion. It's not the first thing. And what I mean by that is oftentimes we feel angry because we first felt hurt, right? So to be angry or to be mad is like, I want that thing to stop. To hate something is to want it to change. So when we're hurt and we are feeling angry, we want whatever stimulus that hurt us to stop. Does that make sense? Yeah. So when you're feeling angry, it would be wise to ask yourself, what hurt me? What hurt me? A while ago, this was a couple years ago, I was talking with, so like I shared with you, my mom passed away, and thankfully He's faithful, and He has added so many wise women to my life, people that I can ask questions to, just seek counsel on, godly men even to come alongside of me, and it's been such a privilege and an honor to have people that are willing to, help me along the way, because I need help. I still need help. And so a couple of years ago, I was talking to a woman, and I was just talking with her, and she was actually my best friend, my childhood best friend's mom, and so she, mothered me quite a bit over the years. And I was sitting with her having tea, and I just cleaned up her kitchen and was talking to her about some of the things I was going through at the time, and she looked at me so seriously, in her serious way, like she always does, and she asked me, is it okay to feel angry? And right away I was like, no. And I was like, I stopped, and I was like, I want to say no, but I know that that's the wrong answer. Like, of course it's okay to feel angry. But something in me told me that it wasn't, that I wasn't allowed. I wasn't allowed to feel angry. I wasn't allowed to feel sad. Now, for me, I've done a lot of work in my own heart and my own life with the Spirit of the Lord to kind of look at why I am doing certain things or why I feel a certain way. So for me, I looked back at the traumas, and I was that I shared with you about when I was 7, I was shot, and all that stuff, not being able to talk about it, not being able to express how I felt about it. And so I saw there was a belief that was formed in me that it wasn't okay to have feelings at that time. And so as a like a 30-year-old woman at that time, I was like, it's okay to feel angry. You're allowed. And nobody gave me that permission throughout my life. And so I had to give myself permission. Like, it's okay if you feel angry about things. That's okay. But then I had to look too, like, okay, well, what has hurt me that is causing me to feel angry? And I don't know about y'all, but I'm real sensitive sometimes. Yeah, you too. So I can be kind of like how you're talking about the idioms of the heart, right? Like wear their heart on their sleeve. I certainly can operate in that, where I'm like wearing my emotions right here, right? And so it's important, one, to have good boundaries, if you know that about yourself, right? But it's okay to feel angry. It matters how you express anger. So even the word of the Lord says, like, not to sin in your anger, right? And so to feel angry isn't wrong, but what you do in your anger is another story. So if when you're angry, you go rob a bank, that was not the best choice, right? So that's where, if you're angry, it's important to take a minute. So with the situation that I went through just last week, actually, I was looking at this person who was very angry at a situation, and I was angry that they were angry because of what they did in their anger. And it was like, kind of a messed up situation where I was like, there's like so many ins and outs. But how many of you know that when we have a relationship, things can get tangled really easily? You say something, it's misinterpreted, or you did something and the intentions of your heart were misinterpreted, and now it's like it's all goofed up. And now you've got to get back to the truth of the matter, and it's like, okay, I understand that you feel this way about what happened, but the truth is that this is what I wanted to happen, but X, Y, Z were factors, right? So some things we can't, there's a lot of things actually that we can't control. And so being able to say, that upset me, but that was outside of my control, or that person did something wrong to me and that made me feel angry, but I'm actually not responsible for them. Now, if it's a relational thing, like you definitely can go to that person and say, hey, what you did, that upset me, it hurt my heart, and now I'm feeling angry. And that's a good opportunity for reconciliation to take place then. Another thing I think that's very helpful in processing anger is physical activity. Because anger can be a really big emotion, right? It can be a really big emotion. So instead of acting out of it, because a lot of the time anger can be explosive then, right? Taking a walk, doing some jumping jacks, something that is physically active to kind of like stir, that helps express that emotion and clear your head. That can be really helpful in processing anger. What else did we say? We were talking about loss too. So loss, when you feel like you are missing something, I think one thing that's helped me the most, like I was sharing with you, I lost my mom, right? And so I felt a lot of grief over the years, especially on things that I could have shared with her that I would have loved to have, and I feel like I'm without. One thing that's helped me the most, I think, is expressing gratitude for the moments or the things that I did have out of that. Does that make sense? So although I no longer have my mom, I'm thankful for the time that I did have. I'm thankful for the truths that she taught me. I'm thankful for kind of silly things, but like I look like her. And so I'm thankful that I look like her and things like that. And so if you can pick out things that you're thankful for in regards to whatever it is you feel like you're lost or that you have lost, that will help process loss. Does that make sense? So, okay. Well, we're not going to go too much longer. I know it's still beautiful outside. So I want to just open the opportunity for questions, thoughts, and let you know that I will be right here if you want to chat or you want prayer or you want to talk about something, whatever that looks like. Otherwise, I just want to thank you all for coming and for being a part. I'm thankful to have had the opportunity to speak to you all, and I just want to bless you. So thank you.